Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that's within me. Bless his holy name. I always like to begin by giving God praise because he's definitely worthy to be praised. Thank God for how he's taking care of us, how he's taking care of our families. We thank God for all his provisions. We thank God for every good and perfect gift that he has bestowed upon us. And so, God, he's worthy. He's worthy to be praised. Just want to thank God for how good he's been towards us. I'm Pastor KZ Smith. I'm the pastor of Corinthian Baptist Church. Corinthian is located at 1920 Tennessee Avenue in Bond Hill. If you don't have a church home, please consider coming to visit Corinthian. Our Sunday worship begins at 10 a.m. We would love to have you to join us for worship. Also, we have a virtual Bible study right now, which is every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Didn't have it last Wednesday. We went out last Wednesday to Pilgrim Baptist Church, and so I didn't even have a new video to come out. So anytime our church is going out on Wednesday, more than likely will not be a video coming out for Bible class, but normally every Wednesday we will have a video for our Bible class. But again, so glad to have you to join us once again. Our prayers go out to those who are sick and those who are grieving the death of loved ones. This coming week, we have two funerals here at the church. We have Brian Bailey, who was killed in an automobile accident in Tennessee. His wife, Yvonne, and his children, our condolences go out to them. And then also this coming Saturday, we're having Pearl B. Lewis, uh, who's 90 was 96 years old. Her son and daughter-in-law go to Corinthian, Jerome and Deborah, and so our prayers and our condolences go out to that family as well. Well, the last time we met, we were talking about eschatology, eschatology, eschatology. Eschatology deals with last things or the last days. When we talk about the last days, we oftentimes think about the second coming of Jesus Christ. We think about the marriage supper of the Lamb, the millennial reign of Christ. John said he saw a new heaven and a new earth. We think about those things, the Antichrist, the beast, all those, are considered to be eschatology studies. And oftentimes we think of eschatology, last days, we think of something way in the future. But from a biblical perspective, eschatology is right now. Eschatology, last days have already began. We are living in the last days right now. And so last days really began on the day of Pentecost. And we call the day of Pentecost the first day of the last days. And so the day of Pentecost is the first day of the last days. And so in our last study on eschatology, I left off with Matthew 24 when the disciples asked Jesus, "What shall be a sign of your coming and of the end of the world?" And so we want to look at Matthew 24. And right now I can tell you that we're going to also look at Revelation, the 6th chapter. And so Matthew 24 and Revelation, the 6th chapter. And to kind of, again, set things up for Matthew 24, um, the Bible tells us that Jesus and his disciples were viewing the temple. The temple was the place that they worshiped. And oftentimes say that not only did they worship in the temple, they actually worshiped the temple. And I can understand why. Because the temple was a very, very, very holy place. It was the place that they met God. It was a place that they came into the presence of God. And so, the temple had this place called the veil, and behind the veil was the most holy place. The holies of holies was behind the veil, and there in the holies of holies was the Ark of the Covenant, which on top of the Ark of the Covenant had the mercy seat. And if you ever saw the Ark, the Indiana Jones, the Raiders of the Lost Ark, well, that's the Ark that they're talking about, the Ark of the Covenant. And the mercy seat really represented the presence of God. And so here they are looking at the temple, and Jesus pretty well tells them that a day is coming when the temple will be completely destroyed. He said this in saying that there will not be one stone of the temple left upon another. And they're thinking like, oh man, if the temple is going to be completely destroyed, and if since the temple is the place that they came into the presence of God, which now would mean they will no longer be able to come into the presence of God. And so therefore they thought Jesus must be talking about, the end of the world, the last days. And they asked him, Lord, what would be a sign of your coming and of the end of the world? And so that's eschatology. What would be a sign of your coming and of the end of the world? And notice what Jesus said there. If you look at Matthew 24, let me just read down. Verse 1, it said, Then Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him to show him the buildings of the temple. Again, Matthew 24, beginning at verse 1. And then verse 2, it reads, And Jesus said to them, Do you not see all these things? Or surely I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down. Now, as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? And Jesus answered and said to them, Take heed that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. And so when they asked Jesus what would be a sign of your coming, the very first thing he says is that many will come in his name, or many will come pretending to be him, and they will deceive many. There will be many claiming to be the Christ, but they will actually be a false Christ. And you really cannot do a study on eschatology, especially the book of Revelation, without looking at Matthew 24, because Matthew 24 and Revelation, the sixth chapter especially, they really go hand in hand. So turn to Revelation, the sixth chapter, verse 1, and remember what Jesus said. The first thing he said, when he was answering the question, what would be a sign of your coming and of the end of the world? He said, well, many will come in my name, saying that they are the Christ. And Revelation, the sixth chapter, verse 1, we find these words. Again, this is from the New King James. Now I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard one of the living creatures saying with a voice like thunder, Come and see. And again, to set this up, if you go back to the fifth chapter of Revelation, there was a book that was sealed with seven seals. And we know that the number seven deals with completeness. And so, in other words, this book was completely sealed, that John could not open it. And so, at all points, a bulletin went out, a search went out. And they searched heaven and they searched earth and they even searched up under the earth, and no one was able to open the book. Then the Bible says a lamb came forth, a lamb that looked like it had been slaughtered. A lamb came forth, and he took the book out of the right hand of the one that sat on the throne. And now the lamb opens the book. He opens up the first seal. And this is Revelation 6, chapter, verse 1. We said when the Lamb had opened one of the seals. And so he opens the first seal. And notice what he sees in verse 2. It says, And I looked, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on it had a bowl and a crown that was given to him, and he went out conquering and to conquer. So after he opened up the very first seal, he sees a person on a white horse, and this person has a crown, and he goes out conquering. Now, to many, this person would represent Jesus Christ because he's on a white horse, he has a bowl, he goes forth conquering. They say, oh, that must be Jesus. But actually, this is the Antichrist. And I believe the text really sets it up to show you that it is the Antichrist. And the reason I'm going to say that is because when you get down to uh, the second, third, and fourth seals, the second, third, and fourth seals go again with Matthew 24. And in Matthew 24, Jesus, the first thing he says was, "Many shall come in my name, saying I am the Christ, and shall deceive many." And so that's what he was talking about there in the first seal. But go now back to Matthew 24. And in Matthew 24, after Jesus said, "Many shall come in my name, saying that they are the Christ," look at verse 6. In verse 6, Jesus then says, "And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom." He said, "You will hear wars and rumors of wars, for nations will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom." And so here, this is talking about war. And so go back to Revelation, the sixth chapter. In Revelation, the sixth chapter, after he had opened up the first seal and this person on the white horse went out riding, notice the second seal, verse 3, in Revelation 6. When he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature saying, "Come and see." And another horse, fiery red, went out, and it was granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, that people should kill one another. And there was given to him a great sword. Look at that. The second horse, the second rider, was given the charge of taking peace from the earth. That's war. And it said, and people should kill one another. And so here the second writer is talking about war. And also the second thing that Jesus said in Matthew 24 was about war. For you shall hear of wars, for nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. And so the two things that he talked about, the second two things that he talked about, go hand in hand. In Matthew 24, the second thing he talked about was war. And in Revelation 6, the second thing he talked about was war. Now go back to Matthew 24 again. And then he said, after talking about war, then in the second part of verse 7, after he says, "And nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom," then he says, "And there will be famine, pestilence, and earthquakes in various places." Notice that again. "And there will be famines, pestilence, and earthquakes in various places." So the third thing he's talking about is famine and earthquakes. He's talking about trouble that's going to come from wars and people fighting against one another. Now go back to Revelation, the sixth chapter, and notice what he talks about after talking about war. In verse 5, he says, "And when he opened the third seal, and I heard the third living creature say, 'Come and see.' And I looked, and behold, a black horse, and he that sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, 'A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine.'" Notice here he's talking about how things are just going to cost a whole lot of money. When in times of famine, in times of scarcity, prices go up. When the supply goes down, prices go up. And so, because there will not be a lot of things that you'll be able to buy, now food prices are going to be sky high. And maybe that was because of the war, that nations fighting against nations. Doesn't really tell us why, but it tells us that during this time, prices are going to be sky high. And we can kind of see how things are going on like that even now. We not too long ago, we were talking about the price of eggs, how much eggs were costing. We always talking about the price of gas. And notice the text says, and do not harm the oil. So the price of gas going up. And can you imagine in some countries, they stand in long lines just to be able to buy a fish and a loaf of bread, to buy one fish and a loaf of bread. Here we still have the luxury and the pleasure of being able to go into grocery stores and basically get whatever we want, even though the prices are going up. We still can get what we want. But there could come a day where we won't be able to buy all the things that we would like to buy. Matter of fact, during the pandemic, if you remember, boy, we were running out of some stuff. We were running out what we call those essentials. Remember toilet paper and Lysol and all those kind of different things. They were hard to find because people were just buying them up, and because of that, it caused some prices to go up. And so again, and also he tells us that not only will prices be going up, he said there will be famine, but there will be earthquakes in diverse places, or earthquakes in various places. And so we know that that's even happening today as well, that starting hearing more and more about earthquakes. We're starting to hear more and more about Morocco and places like that that's going through all kind of devastations. And so again, earthquakes, famines, and all the different troubles in the land, that's the third seal. And then if you go back to Matthew 24, um, he also says, after talking about the earthquakes in various places, and all these are the beginning of sorrows. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. No, now he says, now you're going to be killed. He said, first, we have many that's coming, he said, in his name, that's going to deceive many. And then the second thing he said, you're going to hear wars and rumors of wars, nation against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. Then the third thing he says, there's going to be famine, there's going to be earthquakes in different places. Now he said they're going to deliver you up and kill you. Now notice what he said in the fourth seal in Revelation, the sixth chapter. In Revelation 6, the fourth seal in verse 7, it reads, when he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature saying, come and see. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and the name of him that sat on it was Death, and Hades followed with him. And power was given to them over the fourth of the earth to kill with sword, with hunger, with death, and by the beast of the earth. And so now here, not only we have the war, not only we have famine and earthquakes and hunger and all of that, it says now they're going to deliver you up to kill you. And so now the fourth horse represents death. Because notice what it said in Revelation. And behold, a pale horse went forth, and the name of him that sat on it was Death. And whenever I think about that pale horse, I for some reason think about Clint Eastwood, the pale horse rider. But it said that this horse, not only was it pale, but this horse had a rider on it. The other horses, it didn't say it had a rider. It said the horses just went out. But this horse had a rider on it. And not only did it have a rider on it, it said there was another someone following the rider of the horse. Look, it says, and I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and the name of him that sat on it was Death, and Hades followed with him. And in some translation, it says, Hell followed him. Now, I remember not too long ago, some years ago, I preached a sermon titled, When Death Comes for You, Will Hell Be Following? And that's just really where I got it from, because it said that the rider of the fourth horse, this pale horse, had someone following him, and the one that was following him was called Hell, or was called Hades, which really represented death. And so since the second thing that he said in Matthew 24 lines up with the second thing he said in Revelation 6. And since the third thing he said in Matthew 24 lines up with the third thing he said in Revelation 6, And since the fourth thing he said in Matthew 24 lines up with the fourth thing he said in Revelation 6, then therefore the first thing that he said in Matthew 24 lines up with the first thing now he says in Revelation 6. And that first thing was that the person that shall come to deceive many will be the Antichrist. So this first person that goes out, or the first seal is open in Revelation 6, and this first rider that goes out, that rider is the Antichrist, because all that follows the rider of the Antichrist is destruction, wars and famines and earthquakes and death. And so the rider of that first horse in Revelation 6 definitely represents the Antichrist. Now, again, Antichrist, he wants to have people believe that he's righteous, that he is doing the right thing, which now is going to get people to follow him. And because people have rejected Jesus Christ and they know that someone is coming, they look now to this person that they believe is coming, and now they believe that the Antichrist is the one that they should be following, which is really the person now that Satan is using now to get people to stop people from following Jesus Christ. And so the Antichrist is coming, and we're going to talk more about Antichrist when we do our study in the book of Revelation. But something else I want us to look at since we're in the book of Revelation. Go back to Revelation 6, and he says, when he opened the fifth seal, this is verse 9, Revelation 6, verse 9. When he opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain for the word of God and for the testimony they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, how long, O Lord, holy and true, until you judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth? That's to me, that's important as you look at eschatology, or at least you look at our future or anyone's future. Here, you remember, if you go back to Revelation, the fourth chapter, when after John had written the 7 letters to the 7 churches, immediately he was caught up into heaven and he saw God sitting on the throne. So now John is in heaven. And when he gets to heaven, he now sees these visions. And when the fifth seal now is open while John is in heaven, he sees souls under the altar. And notice the souls, what they asked the Lord. The souls that are under the altar, they asked the Lord, how long will it be, Lord, before you avenge our blood on them that are on the earth? That's important. That's important as relates to what happens at the time of death. Because remember, many of them have been killed now. Because here death is following here in this fourth seal, and so many people have been put to death. And so now we have people who are in heaven, but while they are in heaven, there are still people on the earth. And so this is not the very last day. There are people in heaven while there are people on the earth. How long will it be, Lord, before you avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? There are people on the earth. I point that out because at the time, especially at funerals, what we always say is to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. And so we believe that not at the time of judgment or the time that we stand before the Lord, but we believe at the very time when we die, that we're caught up to be with the Lord. And when we get caught up to be with the Lord, uh, it won't be at the time of judgment. It'll be time when the body has died. So right away, when the body dies, we either go to heaven or we go to hell. And those who are believers, we know that we go to heaven, we go to be with the Lord. But the Bible also lets us know that unbelievers uh, go to this place we call hell. And if you look in Luke, the 16th chapter, in Luke 16, Jesus tells a story of a rich man and another man named Lazarus. And we're pretty well familiar with the story. The rich man, he had everything that he could ever want in life. I mean, and the poor man Lazarus had nothing. He was so poor that he even wanted to eat the crumbs that fell from the rich man's table. I mean, that's how poor he was. But the common denominator was that they both died. And when the poor man died, the Bible said that the angels escorted him to this place called Abraham's bosom, to a place called paradise. When the rich man died, the Bible said he lifted up his eyes in hell. And so they both died. One went to heaven, if you will, the other went to this place called hell. And while the rich man was in hell, the Bible said he was in torment. I mean, we're going to talk about that a little bit later as well, but he was in torment. But notice what the rich man says. If you're in Luke, the 16th chapter, if you're in Luke 16th chapter, the rich man, he wants someone to come and to dip their finger in water to, to cool, uh, to cool him down because he's being tormented in the flame. And in verse 25, it says, But Abraham said, Son, remember that in your lifetime you receive your good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things. But now he's comforted, and you are tormented. And besides all this, between us and you there is a great gulf fixed, so that those who want to pass from here to you cannot, nor can those from there pass to us. Then he says, Then he said, I beg you, therefore, Father, that you would send him to my father's house. For I have 5 brothers, that he may testify to them, lest they also come to this place of torment. Now look here. Uh, those who were in heaven talked about people on earth. Now notice the rich man, he's in hell. And while he's in hell, he said he wants someone to go and testify at his father's house because he has 5 brothers that are still back on the earth. He's in hell, but he has family back on the earth. There were people in heaven, but there were also at the same time people on earth. And so, again, this kind of tells us that when we die, we don't just stay in a grave waiting on, for the trumpet to sound, and then all of a sudden, we either go to heaven or we go to hell. No, right away, when the body dies, the soul goes on to be with the Lord if you are a believer. And that's why Jesus said, He that believeth in me shall never die. We go on to be with the Lord. And we're going to talk more about that later. But the question is always asked, well, if we go to heaven and hell right away, then why do we have to stand before God? I mean, what is the day of judgment all about? Well, the day of judgment is not to necessarily tell us where we're going. The day of judgment basically tells us why we went to where we went. The day of judgment is, those who were saved by grace. Hey, we get to spend eternity with the Lord. Those who try to get in based upon their good works or whatever, the Lord's going to say, Depart from me, I know you're not. I mean, and that's nothing to smile about. It's nothing to make fun of, because it's a very shameful thing. It's a very horrible thing, really, that somebody has to spend all of eternity separated from God. And so that's why it's our job as Christians to really testify to our family, our friends, to those who we come in contact with, to tell them of the good news of Jesus Christ. What's the good news? That He died for our sins, but that He rose again for our justification. Justification means that He rose again, that we can be innocent in God's eyesight, even though we all have sinned and come short of the glory of God, but we can stand innocent because of the blood of Jesus. And so, again, that's our eschatology study for today. We'll kind of pick it back up next week. But again, thank you for tuning in and listening. Again, our prayers go out to those who are going through sickness and those who are grieving. We will definitely remember you in our prayers. And so look forward to next week. Look forward to Sunday at 10 a.m. Let's have a good time on Sunday. Take care.